She always believed that love wasn't about blood but about heart. That belief clung to her like breath, especially after a lifetime of being told she couldn't be a mother in the traditional sense. Every failed IVF cycle, every friend's baby shower, every quiet holiday dinner hardened and softened her all at once, softened her resolve into a tender longing, and hardened her conviction to find a different path. She wasn't broken. She was simply made for a different kind of family. When she first stepped into the tiny, crowded foster home, 5 boys stared at her with guarded eyes. Their clothes were oversized, their hair unkempt, their spirits bruised by years of neglect and rejection. The room was stale with the scent of old socks and disinfectant, yet charged with a silent hope none of them dared speak aloud. Nobody in the world wanted them. They knew this the way other kids knew their favorite cartoons or bedtime stories, by repetition. One by one, she introduced herself quietly, letting her calm presence fill the room. She didn't say much at first, just knelt so she could look into their eyes. Malik's hardened stare, Tariq's flaring defensiveness, Javier's darting glances, Ajay's distant gaze, and Lucas's trembling lips, and promised them safety and care. Even if her voice trembled with nervous hope, it was steady with something deeper, a vow. Those first few weeks were a whirlwind of bureaucracies and endless paperwork, forms, inspections, interviews. Social workers doubted her ability to handle 5 traumatized boys. Some even advised her to consider just 1 or 2, not the full group. But she had already seen the unspoken loyalty they had to each other. Even when they barely spoke, their eyes tracked each other, protective and alert. They had survived too much together to be split apart. She fought every step of the way. She stayed up late reading laws, learned how to speak the language of courts and agencies, showed up with files organized in color-coded folders, answered questions no one thought she'd understand. And then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, the judge signed the adoption papers. It felt like a miracle had swept through 5 little lives and nested itself in her chest. They were hers now. And she was theirs. The boys were 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Each carried scars too heavy for their tender frames. They didn't laugh easily. They flinched at sudden noises. Their eyes scanned every room like they expected to be kicked out of it. She learned to recognize the signs. Malik's tense silence meant his thoughts were spiraling. Tariq's anger wasn't anger. It was fear. Javier drew monsters because they felt more manageable than real people. Ajay disappeared into corners, blending into walls to avoid being noticed. Lucas bit his nails until they bled. Trust came slowly, as fragile as spun sugar. Mornings began with silent meals, where the clang of cutlery echoed the emptiness inside them. She didn't push. She simply made breakfast every day, same time, same way. Pancakes, eggs, toast. Eventually, Malik started pouring juice for the others. Tariq grumbled less and ate more. Javier scribbled on the placemats. Ajay started humming under his breath. Lucas watched her the whole time, as if memorizing every move she made. She started small. After breakfast, she'd suggest drawing together or playing catch in the yard. Most days she was met with blank stares or shrugged shoulders. But some days, Malik would step outside to throw the ball, his face unreadable until he offered a brief nod that made her heart soar. Javier's sketches filled the living room floor, dragons and knights, castles and crumbling towers. Tariq kicked at the grass until he collapsed laughing, his rage spent. Ajay sat on the steps watching everything. Lucas perched on her shoulder like a tiny pilot pointing out clouds. She introduced routines, shared dinners, nightly story time, weekend trips to the park. The first time she read them, The Hobbit, Javier sat up straighter, eyes wide. Malik didn't say anything but stayed close by. Tariq kept interrupting with sarcastic comments, but he didn't leave the room. AJ curled up near her feet. Lucas crawled into her lap and fell asleep before the 3rd chapter. School was harder. Each boy carried invisible weights that made learning feel like climbing mountains barefoot. Teachers questioned her decisions. Some whispered that hope would eventually shatter, that kids like hers didn't make it far. But she persisted. She attended every parent-teacher meeting, brought flashcards and math games home, sat beside them at the kitchen table for hours. Sometimes there were tears, sometimes shouting, but she never gave up. She discovered Malik's love for music when he lingered near an old upright piano in the school auditorium. She enrolled him in lessons, second-hand keyboard and all. She found Javier an art circle where nobody laughed at his dragon-obsessed sketches. Tariq's legs couldn't stay still, so she got him into soccer. AJ's gentle heart shone during community cleanups and food drives. Lucas, the youngest, loved animals, especially broken ones, and their backyard pond became his sanctuary. He fed the fish like they were old friends. The house, once quiet and uncertain, began to hum with life. Messy, chaotic, beautiful life. Homework papers stuck to the fridge, dirty sneakers by the door, laughter in the hallways. Malik composing melodies late into the night. Javier painting murals on the fence. Tariq shouting play-by-plays in the yard. AJ baking cookies with her in the kitchen. Lucas naming every squirrel in the backyard. Teenage years arrived like a storm. Hormones and heartbreak, broken friendships and bad grades. Hassan at school mocked their family, called them the patchwork gang. Malik struggled with depression. There were days he didn't get out of bed. She sat with him in silence, played his unfinished song softly, waited until he whispered something. Anything. Tariq got into a fight and came home with a busted lip. She didn't yell. She just cleaned his wound, held his face in her hands, and told him he was worth more than rage. Javier's art won competitions, got posted in galleries, but he often felt alone in his triumphs. She showed up for every exhibit, standing front and center like it was a Broadway premiere. AJ wrote speeches about family and healing that made people cry. Lucas volunteered at the animal shelter, where he helped a limping dog learn to run. Again. She worked harder than she ever thought possible. Late-night talks about dreams and disappointment, therapy sessions that stripped them all raw. Sunrises spent sharing coffee in silence. She reminded them over and over that their bond was stronger than any pain. They weren't perfect, but they were whole. Not because everything was fixed, but because they faced it together. Years rolled by. The boys became men, resilient, remarkable men. Malik graduated college with honors in music composition. He started teaching kids in underserved neighborhoods, helping them find rhythm in their chaos. Tariq became a community coach, guiding youth away from the streets he once roamed. He could still kick a ball like a rocket. Javier's art graced magazine covers. He used his earnings to open a studio for troubled teens. AJ founded a nonprofit to help siblings in foster care stay together. Lucas enrolled in veterinary school, dedicating his life to healing the hurt no one else noticed. And then, on her 60th birthday, she awoke to silence. The house was still. The boys, now men, had moved out. The kitchen table was too clean. Her hands shook as she poured coffee. A quiet fear wrapped around her. Had they forgotten? Then the doorbell rang. One by one they filed in. Malik with a handwritten symphony titled Home. Tariq with a jersey signed by every kid on his team and the words, Coach because of you, stitched on the sleeve. Javier with a painting of their old house, every cracked shingle and overgrown bush rendered in vibrant, loving detail. AJ with a thick folder outlining a proposal to fund a new foster program in her name. And Lucas, cradling a tiny rescued puppy with trembling paws and eyes full of wonder. She wept, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that what she gave them had come full circle. They had become not just successful, but generous, kind, and fiercely loyal. They presented her with more. Keys to a refurbished building. An old community center they transformed into a sanctuary for foster children. A place where no child would feel unwanted, where siblings could stay together, where healing would bloom like spring after frost. They transformed her living room into a planning center. Laptops open, floor covered in sketches and plans. They debated layouts, voted on color schemes, assigned each other roles. It felt like their childhood all over again. Only this time it was their turn to build something for others. She realized the unthinkable they had done in return. They created a legacy of love. They repaid her faith with a gift that would live, far beyond any of them. As the sun set, they gathered on the porch. 5 grown men and the woman who adopted them. They held hands. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The silence was full, of memory, of gratitude, of everything unsaid but deeply felt. Their bond, unbreakable, shone like a beacon, a testament that love, once cultivated, returns in ways beyond imagination. Not bound by blood but by choice, by perseverance, by the quiet bravery of opening one.